let's start at the beginning. Okay, and what you're asking is halacha trying to define the
proper way for a person to act?
Right, but the fact is already you have to understand what you mean by that. We're talking about, when we talk in terms of ethics, we're talking about an event, okay, and we're talking about what is the proper or the best ethical conclusion of the event, right? So what you're saying is we want this to transpire. So when you ask a question, such as, let's say, the trolley case, it's if you do this, if you don't do anything, keep the train on the track and don't do anything. Okay, in other words, let's take the case where you're standing and you can move the tracks, and if you just let the train go, it will kill 5 people. But if you pull the lever,
obviously you want to do that,
you'll only end up killing 1 person, right? In other words, there's 5 people, over here down this tract, and there's 1 person on this tract, and you see this train is out of control, and you move the lever of moving whether it's going to kill 5 or 1. And usually the way people look at it is in terms of the event. And then the major ethical issue is the issue of quantitative versus qualitative definition of life. Do you look at the number of lives, or is every life of infinite value, and you think in terms of the unique quality of any singular life?
And importance of...
Right, so the fact is you look at the event, and ethics is usually looking at the full event. And then you look at the behavior in terms of the full event.
Can't not doing anything be worse sometimes?
Yeah, in terms of the conclusion and the event, then you can sit there and say not doing anything. If you
learned that also.
Right, but that's exactly it. Over here, if you don't do anything, 5 people will die. If you do something, another person will die.
Right.
Okay, so that leads to a different conclusion. Okay, so what I'm trying to say though is that one of the unique aspects of halacha is the focus much more on the behavior of the individual doing the action.
So in this situation,
this situation, the halacha will look at, halacha is pretty straightforward. Okay, if you do in other words, the halacha is looking at the action. Okay, if you don't do anything, you don't do anything. The fact is, there may be this conclusion, but you're not doing anything.
But
you're
not
passive.
So logical, though. I mean, it's not so ethical.
Well, that's where you get into issues of what the definition of ethics are, or what is the concern. But the fact is that in halacha, it's very focused upon individual behavior. So the fact is that it will make a distinction of what of looking at the event by specifically looking upon your behavior, or what participation you would have to take in that event. So the truth is that you get into a variety of questions. Now, in terms of the action that involves you, and what you're being called upon to do. And halacha is very focused on your behavior. So the truth is that passivity is looked upon very...
Sometimes being passive could be the better. It could get worse if you do something. But let's say you do something and it could be a better. then being passive.
Right.
So wouldn't you take the do over the passive?
And the fact is that then you get into what the halacha says about doing. The truth is that in a situation...
But isn't there halachas on passive too?
Yeah, okay. So the point is let's say, for example, in terms of murder. If I take a person, okay,
don't say anything.
Look, you're not guilty of murder, but let's take a case, okay? I take an individual, okay, I tie him down, okay, I put a raw steak, I put a bunch of raw meat on top of his body or her body, right? I take a lion who hasn't eaten in 24 hours and put him into this room, okay? And I go lock the door, okay? Now, is that permitted? No.
Yeah, that's for others.
Okay, no, it's not permitted to do that, right? Could you get into trouble? Yes, because there's an emergency power in a court to take care of people who deserve to be taken care of. Okay, so there's an emergency power in a Jewish court to do things that are even if someone technically doesn't violate, gets away with violating a law, like you talk about witnesses. For example, I used to always bring up this case. Say a guy walks into the Beis Yaakov school, right? And he locks all the doors in the Beis Yaakov school, and takes everyone down to the assembly room, okay? And takes all the men that are there, okay? And in front of all the women in the assembly home, right? He kills them all, okay? What happens to this person who kills all the men in the Beis Yaakov school in front of the women? Okay? So the argument is women can't be witnesses, right? So women can't be witnesses. So they go to the court, and he comes out, and this murderer comes out and goes out to the policeman and says, "I just killed all the men in there," right? And all these women will tell you that I did it. What happens to this man? So people say, well, ain't out a Russia. Person does, a confession doesn't work in Jewish law. You can't make yourself a Russia, so confession doesn't work. So that doesn't work. So his confession doesn't count. Throw it out of court. And women aren't witnesses. So I guess he goes he's scot free, right? What do you think happens to this guy? Well, there's an emergency power in the court. There's also the Beis Din HaMelech, who's, the guy will be taken care of, right?
And by heaven, you're saying?
No, by the Jewish court.
The court will...
beans or something?
What?
Because they know.
Well, the truth of the matter is if it's in the Beis Din HaMelech, he'll get killed by the Beis Din the way the Melech wants to take care of him.
Wait, why?
And the fact because there's an emergency power in the Jewish courts to take care of what's necessary for law and order. Okay, but in terms of the violation of Ritzicha, and that he gets Sayev pursuant to Jewish law, the technical definition, if you murder, the punishment is Sayev, which is a beheading. Oh, the guy will not be found guilty of murder, right? The court will take care of him, but the guy will not. Okay.
So in a way, they do take the women's word for it.
In a way, they do what's necessary. There's an emergency. Yeah, because the court is allowed to take care of.
Under the
court can do what's necessary to maintain law and order. Okay, even if you get off on a technicality. Okay, even if you said there's no witnesses or so. Listen. We don't let the world
people,
become.
Will think they can get away with under some loophole or something.
Right. The fact of the matter is, when it's necessary for, and the Roman puts limits on it. Once has to be necessary for law and order. Okay. The fact of the matter is, if it's some law that will not affect law and order, the one will say, well, yeah, you get away with it. Unless you're undermining the whole fabric of society.
It depends on the level of the.
But that's a decision.
Thing.
That's a decision of. So if people are really promoting, let's say, are adamantly going out there and saying, let's eat pork in an ancient Jewish society, and they do it by making sure you never, even with Hashra, you never respond to witnesses, stuff like that. If it's going to undermine the very fabric of the society, then it'll be taken care of. But in general law, but the truth is, that's a law and order issue. But the fact is halacha generally deals with stating or directing you vis-a-vis your behavior, and the focus is the behavior. The focus is the action. And the fact is that, that's what I'm saying, in that case with the lion, you do that, put someone in there, put them in the line, I can tell you, you're not going to enjoy what the court's going to do to you. Okay? And it might be pretty, it might want to make a point to make sure no one ever thinks of doing that again. Right? And say, hey, here's a way to get away with murder. I'm not going to shoot the guy, I'm going to tie him up in front of a lion. You're not going to do that either. The court's going to make sure you're not going to think about that either. However, the fact is, in the actual definition of ritzicha, of murder, right, you didn't actually do the act of murder. You just tied the guy up in front of a lion. The actual action of killing that person was done by the lion. So the halacha is much more, it has a certain aspect of focus on behavior. In other words, the halacha directs action. Now that's really what I'm pointing out, and that makes halacha somewhat ethically somewhat distinct than other ethical systems, because its focus is much more on the behavior of the individual. So it does look at the event. There is broader aspects where it will look at the event, but it will make the distinctions based upon your active participation or your passivity in that situation. Now, one of the ways this makes a big difference that a lot of people don't understand is vis-a-vis euthanasia. There's a major halachic distinction between what we call passive euthanasia and active euthanasia. Okay? And sometimes it's hard to distinguish the two. But the point is that active euthanasia is murder, because you are taking an action to end someone's life. Passive euthanasia is not considered to be murder. With passive euthanasia is just not taking action to prolong someone's life. Okay? So the question is that do you have, and you find this in a lot of halachic issues, where it's like your behavior is what are you actually doing? Are you being active or are you being passive? And passive meaning that you're letting what is happening today just occur. Now, is there ethical issues with that as well? And therefore you have to raise issues like that. So for example, when the halacha would say, no, you can't pull the switch to save 5 people at the expense of one person's life.
Is that what it would say?
Yeah. Okay, so the fact is you can't pull the switch. The point is then you get into issues of why is that so. And one of the reasons that's so is because of, then you get into arguments of the inherent infinite value of life. It's
so
and then
very problematic.
It's something. It's it raises the word problematic. I'm not happy with the word problematic. It raises a lot of issues to further understanding. There was a famous case of Rabbi that came before Rav Moshe, and it's not written up in the Igros Moshe, The only place I ever saw it written up was there's a book put out by Rav Moshe's son-in-law, Rav Moshe Tendler, where he translates some of Rav Moshe's medical tshuvas, and in it he writes about this sort of known tshuva that Rav Moshe never put in the Zikras Moshe. The case was like this, and it became a big issue in the United States because it concerned a family from Lakewood. Okay, so a Frum family in Lakewood, where this Frum family had Siamese twins. Okay, and the situation was such that I forget what was joined, but whatever was joined could not be shared. Okay, so basically the situation was, if you let it just be, both children would die. Okay, the medical solution was to save one of them at the expense of the other. Okay, so it was a big issue in the United States, and what happened was that the twins were actually sent to, what's the place in Washington, the big hospital in Washington, like, you know, where the president gets checked out, Walter Reed or whatever, right? Okay, so that's where they went to Walter Reed to wait for the decision, and they got the best experts in the world all down to Walter Reed to do the operation. In other words, every top specialist of whatever necessary for that operation was in Washington to wait for the operation, and the press was covering it and waiting for what would happen. Did you ever hear this one?
Yeah.
Okay, what would happen? And they were waiting. And then Everett Koop was the Surgeon General, so he came out there and he said, "So what's happening? Why don't you go? Everyone's here. Why don't you go ahead already?" and so forth.
Why are they waiting?
Okay, so Everett Koop, who was the Surgeon General of the United States at the time, said, as you can well imagine, this is a major ethical issue of what to do. Okay, and I can tell you, there's a little old rabbi on the lower west side in New York, right? Okay? So Edward Koop says, I have no idea of how to solve this ethical dilemma, but there's this little old rabbi, the sage, right? Okay, and it's like basically very complimentary about Rav Moshe, because he was like he was noted as one of the sages of ethics of the world and so forth. He says, this is rabbi up in Lower East Side. And when he tells me what's ethical and what I can do, then I'll know what to do, and then we'll do it. So they all were waiting for a Moshe's sack. Okay, and it was it was a tough issue. Okay, and there was arguments given this way, that way, but the fact of the matter is that a simple answer, save one, or the both will die, right? That wasn't a good enough answer. Okay? The fact is you could not take action to kill one, okay, even to save, even though both would die otherwise, even to save one.
Is it because you're making a choice and that's not really fair?
No, because you're taking an action.
Just for taking the action.
Because you're taking an action to kill. Okay? And the fact is that part of it is the fact that you have to choose which one to kill.
Seems like the one is based on more emotional, one is like
no, it's not. It was
like your action is not like an emotional thing. It's just
okay. So if you want to apply that idea that it's much more okay. So that's a possibility that you're looking at action in terms of being much more rational with the mind and so forth and so forth. But the fact is what it comes down to is that Rav Moshe, I forget Rav Moshe's argument, but Rav Moshe basically in the end he came up with a reason why, and it was very necessary to identify who it is, who is the twin. What, it's turned off?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Who the twin is.
Who owned the organ?
What?
Who owned the organ?
No, who is the twin that would be, it's, it was,
who had the
who's
more
going
likely
to,
chance of surviving?
no, it wasn't really, it was like, who was the, you had to basically said, this one was going to die, this one was not going to die. I mean, the fact of the matter is I forget his argument.
How do you make that decision?
Yeah, but in fact, I forget his argument. But his argument was not just simply, well, two will die otherwise, so we might as well save one. But it became very much that this action was permitted because you could do this and this and this and this. But it became very much of a specific action that this action was permitted. And that becomes a significant, I forget the argument, like one, I know there were people who were trying to argue whether one was a rodef and the other, and therefore you can kill the rodef, but Moshe basically said, I know in this one he said, no, you can't declare this one the rodef. Okay, so that didn't work. But the point is though, is what you really see from that issue, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the details, but the argument is the focus is on the behavior and the action. It's not just looking at the event and the conclusion of the event. Halacha is very focused on the behavior of the individual, and it's a different type of ethical perspective. It's basically saying what you can do, what you cannot do, in terms of your behavior and your involvement. Now, one of the reasons that might be a factor in this type of thought is because ultimately everything is in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in any event. So, for example, and this is a Ramban and so forth, there's a halacha that talks about Edom Zomimim. Edom Zomimim are a specific type of false witnesses. It's a specific type of false witnesses. Two witnesses come and say, Reuven killed Shimon. Okay? Two witnesses come and say, Reuven killed Shimon. Then another two witnesses come and say, how could you say that you saw Reuven kill Shimon because you were with us? Okay? We have no idea if Reuven killed Shimon. Okay? We're just saying your testimony is problematic because you were with us.
Like
you cannot have made that.
One lying. Someone's lying.
So the point is the assumption of halacha is that the second witnesses are accepted, and that's the whole issue of why is it that the second witnesses are accepted. So
but I think if they're found later to be wrong,
yeah, that's a different case. That's a different case. Okay, let's just deal with the simple case. So you have two witnesses, Joe and Henry, come and say Reuven killed Shimon. Then Bill and Ted come and say, Joe and Henry, how could you say you saw Reuven killed Shimon because you were with us? Okay? In that case, in that particular case, if Bill and Ted said, listen, you didn't see Reuven kill Shimon because Reuven and Shimon were with us at that time, that's not this case. That's a matter of the testimony being challenged, two different witnesses giving contradicting testimony. Therefore, the case is problematic because you don't have clear-cut evidence.
So then they
but in this case,
even if someone got killed or something.
Well, that gets into the mechanics of conflicting witnesses.
Right.
But in this case, okay, if Bill and Ted said, Joe and Henry, you can't say that Reuven killed Shimon because you were with us, that's the case of Edom Zomim. And in that case, whatever the Edom Zomim wanted to do to the
or whatever
what do you call it, the accused is done to them. So if they come and say, if they come and say, we saw Reuven kill Shimon, and then their challenge, you couldn't have said that because you were with us, and that was the final thing, that your testimony is challenged because you were with, because they say you were with us and they're proven to be correct, or comes to that conclusion. So the Beis Din says you are Edom Zomimim, so you get killed. Okay, now you only get killed in a very specific time period. There has to be a judgment, okay, a Gemar Din, but there can't be an execution. Okay, so it has to be that you're found that this occurs after the conclusion of the court case. The verdict is given, but the execution or the punishment is not carried out. Okay, to Reuven. Okay, if it happens wait a second, let's go on this. If it happens that Reuven is actually executed, okay, then Joe and Henry are not executed. It's only if
during the situation.
It's only if it's only after there was a verdict that says Reuven has to be killed, but Reuven is not executed. It's kasher zomin. The Gemara says kasher zomin v'lo kasher yad.
Is that because they caused him death?
No, they didn't cause death. The fact that
beforehand, and then the ruling goes through, and they kill the guy because of it. And they
didn't kill him. He can't be killed. If Reuven is found guilty of murder,
goes on the witness.
Okay, Reuven is called guilty of murder. Okay, if Reuven is actually killed, then these first witnesses are not killed. If Reuven is not killed, the verdict is given, but he's not killed yet, then what do I say? Joe and Henry get killed. However, if Reuven is killed, the verdict is carried out, the execution is carried out, Joe and Henry are not killed. That's the Gemara. It says kasher zamim below kasher asa. Now that's a crazy situation. What do you mean? And
it's
the
almost like they caused him to be killed, and then they're lying.
But they didn't. No, they didn't cause. Right. They didn't. In other words, they didn't cause him to get killed. That's the whole point. It's only if he's found guilty, but he's not killed yet, that the Edom Zomimim, these witnesses are killed. However, if the guy is actually killed, in other words, they actually carried out their plan with their false testimony, and the guy killed, they're not killed. So that's a crazy case.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Mefarshim all bothered by it, and the fact of the matter is, they have an argument. It should be a kal v'chomer. Should be a kal v'chomer. If you get killed because you just brought in the verdict even before the guy's killed, so if you actually killed him, why aren't you should be killed? So there's a whole variety of issues why this and so on and so forth, all these arguments. However, one of the things that emerges is the Ramban says the reason is because you assume that if a guy got killed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu must have had a reason for that guy to be killed anyways. So it's a problematic argument.
Very problematic. About the 5 people.
Right, but the fact is,
like wherever the train is going, that's
well, it could be an aspect of
the Holocaust.
In fact, well, the problem
like
is once, but the issue comes up where you bring in the factor of God. Now, the truth is that in a certain way, he's sort of using God as like, listen, we don't really understand the ethics, morality, we don't understand the situation, but if that's what actually happened, God must have had a reason. And that's somewhat difficult, because in our world we're supposed to operate with our own free choice and our own thinking, and analysts we're supposed to understand. But the fact is that the Ramban gives that possible answer to explain Kasher Edom Zomim. The problem is the question is much better than the answer. Why is it that you don't kill him? Why is it you don't kill him if he actually carried out his evil plan with the false testimony? It's a good question. The point is, though, is that the question itself is still legitimate. It raises ethical issues. And the fact is, you should be thinking about these ethical issues. Why is it that you let 5 people die in one? It's a real problem. In a certain way, the fact that there's some type of divine nature behind everything, you sort of say, okay, there's some explanation for this. We just don't understand it.
When things go wrong for you, and then are you allowed to blame it on God for that? He didn't want you to have it?
Well, that's an interesting question. The truth of the matter is that you can blame God, but the point of the matter is it comes back to you, because then, why didn't God want you to have it? And what you just said,
right.
Because you must have done something to not put God in your corner.
Right.
Okay, so therefore it comes back to blaming yourself. So, but the point is
then that would be like a very vicious cycle.
Well,
let's
no,
say
the truth
do everything righteous in that sense, or to the best of your ability.
Okay, so the truth is that raises a question, and one of the aspects of raising that question is to sort of question yourself of whether you actually know whether you really are doing right or doing to the best of your ability. One of the things that a lot of people really, what I find is there's always an aspect of self-questioning. Okay, you may not have the answer to your self-questioning, but belief in God in certain ways should challenge your ego. In certain ways it should build up your ego. On one say, like they say, you carry two pieces of paper, in your pocket. One is Bishvili Nivra Olam, the world was created for me, and the other one is Ani Afer Ve'efer, right? I am, dust and dirt or whatever. But the point is that in certain ways, there's a way of looking at yourself and working, and there's a way of looking at yourself when you're actually thinking in terms of God's world. The point is that sometimes with ethical questions, you are sort of, you may be bonded by some answers, but sometimes you sort of, when you sit there and say, gee, God must have a plan, that's not just a catch-all perspective. It's to sit there and to say, yeah, God knows what He's doing, but I have no idea of understanding it. What always bothers me more than anything is that when you really say God has a plan, part of that is, and I have no idea how it's working, so maybe I should not be so confident about having knowledge of that plan. And that usually is what I find to be a lot of times the problem, because usually try to explain everyone to explain what God's doing in a way that basically makes them feel that they know what's happening. You know something? A lot of things that happen in the world, I'm sure God has a plan, but sure He hasn't consulted me about it, because I for sure have no idea what's happening.
It seems to be that's the consensus.
No, you know something? Most people really don't think like that. Most people really think that they have an idea of what God's thinking.
If it works well for them.
You know something?
To some degree, or if they can accept it.
If it's not working well, they don't look at themselves and say, okay, where's my weakness?
Yeah.
Okay? And the point, even if it's working well or whatever it is,
let's see, you work on that weakness. You consistently work on it. And
you know something? The fact is that
better not to deal with it.
So maybe you aren't seeing your weakness. Well, you see, everything you're saying is based upon an assumption
of... The weakness is...
You don't know what the weakness is.
Beyond you to really deal with, even if you know what it was.
And you know something? A lot of times, it's just a matter of not knowing. See, even along the idea when you think about your weakness and something like that.
To live with not knowing.
Yeah.
Like that, depending on the circumstance.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. The fact is, what I find from a lot of people is the the real bewilderment. Okay, I always find a lot of people like this happened because of this avera, and the answer is not to do that avera, and so forth. You know something? I'm glad you're so confident. You know it's because of that avera that it happened, right? Okay, and you know what that person did wrong, and blah blah blah.
Who's saying this?
People.
From God's perspective, or just people?
Yeah, people. They always. Here's the answer, right? This occurred because these people did this avera. You know, the truth is that we really are caught with a dialectic tension that most people can really find difficult.
It seems even worse though than you're saying. You don't know. You try to figure out knowing, but you really keep thinking you don't know.
Right.
And then you're just making yourself nuts.
No. That the truth of the matter is
better to not.
No, the truth
let
is
yourself get
no. The
involved
truth is that what you just said is make yourself nuts. The point is that
not going to be a very happy person in the day.
The fact is that it's really the dialectic of how you live with both aspects. On one hand, you strive to understand, and on one hand, you also recognize that real understanding is beyond you. Okay? Acceptance of God.
It's a little too it's easier to say that. You know what I mean?
You know something? You're right. It's easy to say that, but the fact of the matter is, it's not really.
The complexity drives much more than that.
No, that really is the complexity.
Yes, but then the situations are the complexity.
The fact is, if a person can live with that dialectic, okay, then that really points out the complexity. But it's really the human condition. I want to say fair
enough, but it's not. It's just I don't know.
Yeah, the fact is that.
I don't know. It's hard to accept.
A lot of people.
That's what you should do.
No, because a lot of people believe in God because they want to have answers. Okay? A lot of people really believe in God because they want answers. And they want, here's the answer. Here's this. It's the reason why ISIS attracts people. ISIS attracts people because people want answers. Right? The fact of the matter is...
But what are answers for? What are you getting at?
The truth of the matter is the real answer is... I'm to try and understand, but let me understand. But let me also recognize the very idea that I'm trying to understand is that God is beyond me, and He's the one with the answers. And that dialectic, that balancing of that, is really the challenge that we live with, and that's a challenge that most people, really find difficult because people want answers. People turn to God to give answers. And the truth is God really should be created. The truth is that I think Rabbi said just pointed out, the fact of the matter is once you understand that the minute you start believing in God, it means you're going to have more questions, then you're already going to get somewhere. Okay? Okay? Belief in God is not an answer.
That's where the problem is, though. When you start having all the questions.
No, the point.
That's where it gets
you don't know how to deal with the questions. You don't know how to live with the questions because you don't know how to live with the dialectic. Because most people don't.
It's something I've worked on for years.
The fact is people.
It's not so
I understand that, but the fact is, when you say you worked on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Seriously.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, and I'm telling you. Okay, so what classes did you go to people who spoke about the dialectic?
It was mainly through Chabad because they had.
Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. I didn't ask about that.
What are you saying?
I asked you, did you go to what classes you went to with people who spoke about the dialectic?
What classes?
Or what shiurim did you go?
Like that all day long would deal with it.
No. Did they deal with the dialectic?
Specifically, like working on these issues.
No. The dialectic.
What?
We don't have an answer. That's a starting point. Okay? We have to learn how to live with the question. That's a starting point.
Right.
Is that the way?
That was accepted, yes. That was completely... Yeah.
That was a starting point.
Yeah.
So when you walked out of the class, you basically said, I have more questions.
It was more like I've thought in like trying to understand things, but I was accepting everything. Just to absorb
no, wait a second,
the knowledge, you know?
That's not what I said.
Giving the benefit of the doubt.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. Right? And you said you accepted anything.
That's what I'm saying, though.
Okay, but the point of the matter is that's not living with the dialectic. Living with the
What do you mean by living with the dialectic?
Living with the dialectic is not assuming or having assumptions or whatever, except for the basic assumption that says that God's understanding this, I don't, and therefore I...
Yeah, 100%.
And I don't have any... I can't say anything about it then.
Yeah, 100%.
No.
That was what I was living with, literally. No, I'm
Am I
serious.
being clear? What I'm saying is different?
Like, literally what you're saying is what I had...
No, because the fact is that they're saying you don't understand, and here's the answer. Okay? Okay? There's a difference between saying you won't understand, but here's the answer. It's
living with the question. Like, that's what was a theme a lot. Like, being able to live with a question that you can't necessarily answer. Like, yeah, like
living with a question that you can't really answer means that you don't have an answer.
Right.
And means that any explanation is inherently problematic.
It helps you deal with it, but it wouldn't necessarily... It helps up to a certain point. At that point, it was okay, and
okay,
then
let me
more challenging.
Let me say it like this. I rarely deal with the Holocaust. People ask me questions about the Holocaust. I rarely deal with it.
Right. It's not something you can really give an answer to.
Because it's not something easy to answer or something like that. Because any attempt at trying to explain it is insulting. Okay? Because it is incomprehensible. So the truth is, if you say even that God had a reason, okay?
Is an insulting kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, it's like...
I know way.
Okay, what are you talking about? The evil that was associated with it, the evil of the individuals involved, the lack of the craziness that was involved, and then you start understanding the people who created challenges to it. So the truth is that
people came out either good, like able to deal with it. Some people did not, and they looked at religion one way and looked at it another way.
Right, and every one of those conclusions is a possibility, and I don't know. The point is, even an attempt to try and explain it, to me, is... So I talk about it and say, listen,
I mean,
it's
we didn't go through it, so we can't really feel that expression properly.
But the fact is that it is... That's right. So the truth of the matter is that I'm not going to venture an opinion. Okay? God had a reason, but even to say God had a reason is insulting on a certain level. So the way I deal with it is I don't know how to deal with it.
Right.
Okay? And therefore I avoid talking about it as much as I can. because I think that any attempt to deal with it itself is insulting. Now, the truth is, you can say that the same way about a lot of the tragedies of life that we went through. But the point is that's a very different way than God had a reason and we just don't understand the reason. But it's a different say to say God had a reason, we just don't understand it. But you should assume that I'm saying that, wait a sec, God had a reason itself should leave you feeling.
Like, how could he do that? Like, you could go that way, or you could.
No. Leaving you in the question. What does it mean by leaving you in the question? That the answer that God had a reason itself leaves you in a quandary.
Yeah, and usually you don't just leave it at that.
That's why I'm saying when you talked about these things,
upset about
when you talk
God
about
allowing
that,
it, or
I'm not even going in that way.
I'm just saying you're trying to live with it in a certain sense.
No, the fact of the matter is basically
and not just
what
say, oh,
no. The truth is the fact of the matter is why am I living with it? Because it was a reality. And after there, I have nothing else to say about it. But I'm not trying to live with it by trying to give some. I'm basically
reality,
saying
that's the world. How the world can work.
This is the world, and I have nothing else to say about. I mean, the fact is, it's a world. So when people start
bringing into a religious aspect in it, it becomes very.
What you're saying is what you're presenting. What you're presenting is when I talked about living with the dialectic, I'm saying living with the I don't want to use the word mystery because that's too positive. Living with the absence of knowledge, living with the absence of understanding.
But that's the point. That's a good point. Why can't we live a life positive? Like, even though, yes, there's negative, why can't we just allow accepting a way that works more positive?
Because that's not what life is.
It's not realistic so much, you're saying.
No, I'm saying, listen.
Isn't it better to have a system that will create
it's better to have a system.
Positivity
it's better to have a system that deals with truth. And the truth is a total...
You make a system, everybody else makes a system. When we were living in Israel during the Intifada, we had some work done in the house, and there was a man building something for us, a path, and he says, you know why there's the Intifada? A Palestinian. You know why there's the Intifada? And why? He says, because the women in Ramallah are going around not dressed tzanua.
That's
so every people and every part of the people is going to have different opinions, and they're thinking they have the truth. Right. It's like, go figure.
But the fact is that what you really you can understand Moshe Rabbeinu, right? He's begging God to go into Eretz Yisrael, and God's saying no, right? Moshe Rabbeinu asked God, Tzadik v'Ralo, Rasha v'Tovlo, explain it to me. Why good things happen to bad people, why bad things happen to good people. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know. Okay, now here's Moshe Rabbeinu. This guy, he's talking, panim el panim with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he has to live with the fact that I can't go into Eretz Yisrael. I don't understand this. I mean, that's...
Like he's built up knowing this is the ultimate thing you could do, but no, you can't.
So the point is...
very difficult to live with.
The point is when you're saying people, live with God being good or we don't understand. Whenever I hear most people give an answer of we don't understand, it's like pablum. we don't understand, but it obviously has a good reason, and it's a good reason, and
But you
and then
wanna
and then
know
they
those
throw
reasons.
it.
When it gets to that situation,
But
you
then
wanna have
you throw out a
something
reason.
there.
Then you throw out a reason, but it's not. And then if the reason
to
is
be a
kind of
proper reason.
no, but even if the reason is pablum, they'll sit there and say, see, I don't really understand, but they're going to buy the pablum anyways because it makes them feel that they have a reason, so forth and so forth.
Some people
But-
can do religion
but
that
you're-
makes
you're-
them feel good.
but
so
you're
that-
not-
that
but
can
I'm-
only
but
go to
I'm-
a certain extent.
But what I'm trying to point out with you is that what you're not recognizing, or what you're having is that real understanding of I don't know what's going on, right? That really leaves you walking away with remarkable humility, with remarkable like what's going on.
But
Like,
then you have to deal with your day-to-day issues.
yeah, and
then it's not so easy to be,
you're
like,
right, and
humbled by it, you know?
you're right, and that's what makes life very hard.
There's a difference between being humble and being like stepped on.
But
you know,
not,
kind of
you're
thing.
right. So that's another dialectic.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about is when people throw out the answer, we don't know, we don't understand, and it's really a prelude to basically saying, but I can assume this and this and this, without really understanding the full intensity of what you're really saying, which is, I'm totally in a fog of what's going on in life, right? Now, you can't live totally saying you're in a fog.
If you live like that, it's
You won't be able to do anything.
very difficult.
Right?
Yeah, you won't
Right. So therefore,
function
what does
properly.
Judaism call upon you to do is the dialectic. On one hand, you have to recognize that you have no idea of what's going on. On the other hand, you have to act and you have to try and figure out what's going on, or act as if you have some idea of what's going on. And it's a dialectic. You got to read some of this stuff from Rabbi Soloveitchik. It's a real intensity. It's a real challenge. Okay? You know, it's like.
So now, okay.
Okay, and what I'm saying
But
is
then
the
there's
case.
different ways of going.
But what
about
I'm
living
saying
that way.
is that you're
Accepting.
what I'm saying is that you have a difficulty in dealing with what I'm really saying because people have thrown out things to you that give you the impression of saying something similar when they really haven't. And therefore, because when they're saying this statement, they're not really saying with, I'm in a fog. Okay? Like, for example, you know, it's like, I've written about this before. You know what the one thing that drives me crazy about Mashiachas is? Okay, they walk around and say, the Rebbe's Mashiach. He died, you know, 20 years ago, but he's a Mashiach. But what's really, and then they'll sit there and say, we have an argument, because the Rebbe said he was Mashiach, and so forth and so forth, therefore, argument. You know what my argument is with these guys? Is I sit there and say, well, he says, okay, so why do you believe him? So even if you want to argue that the Rebbe said it, given all the other Rabbanim who disagree, why are you accepting him as a Das Yachid? And then there's people who challenge that he said it in his own right. So the truth of the matter is, that what you're telling me, is you know what you're really telling me? Is you're an egomaniac, okay, who basically feels that he can make a decision without really taking in the full spectrum of what's going on. If you say about, you know, the Fianias deity, according to the total weakness of my ability.
Complete humbleness for this
so
person,
if you really no, not for that person. No. The fact that you see what you just said misses the point.
Why?
You just missed the point. It's not humbleness for this person. It's a fact of what humbleness is. Is that you should understand that you're an idiot. Okay, not because you accept the Mashiach. Is your starting point should be.
People can say that about.
They can say it about me.
As well.
You're right. They can say it about me.
Yeah.
The fact is to start off with saying I'm in a fog. So the truth is, if I'm going to make a decision, I understand. I make this. People ask me why I make decisions, why I'm an Orthodox Jew.
Yeah.
So the first thing I can sit there and tell you the arguments why Reform Jews are Reform Jews. I can tell you arguments why people are. I can sit there and say, listen, this argument is presented for this belief to a certain extent. I didn't really investigate it that much because I really find that to be problematic. Okay? There are reasons I accept this argument. Could I be off? Yeah, because I don't know all history. I don't have all those things. But the truth of the matter is my original assumption is that Lefi Anias Daiti, according to the limitations of my own ability to think, which is one of the reasons why doubt is so significant. What does doubt really say? Doubt basically says, I'm a human being. How do I really know the truth? Anyway, everyone says, "Ani ma'amin be'emunah shalema." I believe with a full belief, right? Everyone says these are the 13 principles of Rome. The Rome never wrote that. That's a piyut. Sorry if I'm too loud. That's a piyut was written afterwards. Okay? I believe with a full belief. Who are you? Who are you to say I have total knowledge? Well, from where?
Wasn't there this dictum that from Har Sinai that we have to 100% believe that this happened,
really?
Even though we didn't?
Really?
What is that?
Really?
That whole line.
Really?
Like,
really? Do you understand that?
I don't at all.
Okay, so therefore,
taught, like throughout my life.
So therefore, in your starting point, that's why when I said, when you went through your educational system,
that's one of the things I question, obviously, in my
right,
mind,
it
but
doesn't
I kept
mean,
it inside.
Yeah, but the fact is, when you start off with your statement in terms of belief and so forth and so forth, that's what I'm saying. When you said those original statements you said, and why I got off of this on this tangent, is that they don't understand the dialectic. Yes, but they do. Because they say, we don't understand, and so forth and so forth. So if they don't understand, how can they make a statement that I have to know 100%?
Just to feel good about yourself.
Whatever. I'm not interested in the answer. I'm not interested in it. What I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to sit there and say is, that's already a starting point. Because the starting point is if you're in a fog, and you recognize that you're limited as a human being, then how can you make any statement as absolute? Even belief in God. So, who are the people able to make much more, and that's why if people bring up the case of the Akedah, right? You go, what would you do if God told you to kill your son today? I said, first of all, okay, what are you talking about? First of all, I think I would do it, but God never spoke to me before. So if I heard a voice from heaven saying, go take your son and sacrifice him on a mountain, what do you think would be the first thing I would do?
Call 911.
Exactly. I would sit there and say, I think I need a hospital right away. Right? Avraham Avinu who had this experience, he understood who God's world. So the truth of the matter is that, the point is,
that,
right? The fact of the matter is that you look at this.
Why
the truth of the matter
that even if we can't even understand?
So then what are you supposed to learn from it?
Right.
These are questions that are real questions.
Exactly.
And the fact is that there is something you can learn from it, and there's understanding you get from it. But but you have to understand it within the context of who you are within your worlds. And the point is, that's why I was trying to get back to you. You've heard all these ideas. The people throw out to say, we can't understand. There must be a good reason. Yes, Kosh Baruch Hu must have a reason. And yes, I would sit there and say, Kosh Baruch Hu has a good reason. Okay? Does that make me feel in any way better? Not really. Why? Because I have no understanding still.
Right.
Right? I'm still totally in a fog.
Would you say that's a good way to live your life?
No, the fact of the matter is then the question is how you learn how to live. That's where you start understanding Judaism.